Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm DFX. Join me as we dive into my top 4 Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. Let's get into it. Alright, kicking things off for my number 4 favorite Star Trek The Next Generation episode is none other than Unification, which brings back Mark Lenner as Sarek, Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and a special appearance by Denise Crosby as Denise Crosby's character Natasha Yar's daughter, Sela. Basically, this episode breaks down to Spock disappearing. He's now an ambassador and heads back to Romulus to try to reunite the Vulcan and the Romulan people. And if a lot of people may not know this, but that Vulcans and Romuluses are pretty much the same species, same culture, but they had some kind of war years back and they split apart, but Spock's trying to bring them back together. So they send Captain Picard to go investigate, and so him and Commander Data go and try to find out what's going on. And basically, yeah, that's pretty much the episode. Like I said, this was a 2-part episode, but for the purposes of my countdown, it's only going to be made as 1 episode. And this episode aired back in 1991. Both episodes, part 1 one week, part 2 the next week, and it was in season 5, episodes 7 and 8. Let's move on. Okay, number 3 on my countdown is another returning original series cast member returns to the Next Generation era. This time, Scotty returns, and James Doohan reprises his role as Mr. Scott. He's been trapped in a transporter buffer for 75 years, and while Geordi and Commander Riker are on a away mission, they unlock him and in the transporter buffer, and he re-energizes into the 24th century. Very clever idea. Very cool to see James Doohan reprise his role as Scotty and how he responds in the 24th century. Really happy that Scotty's is one of my favorites. Like a lot of the engineers on the show are my favorite characters, even though I'm not an engineer myself. But Scotty and Geordi were my favorites, and the play that they have together in this episode is really, really striking. Also, a really cool thing later on in this episode, they recreate the original Enterprise bridge, and Scotty sits in the captain's chair and shares a drink with Captain Picard. But really fun episode. Let's continue on. All right, number 2 on my countdown. This is a very interesting episode that comes from season 5, episode 18, Cause and Effect. So a lot of people might go, why is this on your countdown? I don't know, I just thought this was a really creative episode. And it has a very special guest star right at the end, Kelsey Grammer. But yeah, how many times can you blow up the Enterprise? Well, this episode shows you how many times, actually. But the Enterprise gets caught in a thing called a causality loop. It's a temporal loop. And they keep reliving the same day over and over again. Kind of like Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. But they finally break the loop when they put a secret code in for Commander Riker's suggestion of how to solve the problem. And for most of the time, it's the same episode over and over again, like Groundhog Day. So, but I always enjoyed this episode, and it may not be one of your favorites, because everybody's favorite's going to differ, but this was always a favorite of mine. Just went on and on. Just little clues popped up in each time loop experience they went through, and they finally figured it out and welcomed somebody from another century into the 24th century. Kelsey Grammer's character. But one of my favorite episodes, and tell me what you think of this episode in the comments below. One more to go. Let's do this, guys. All right, we've reached the number 1 favorite episode of mine from Star Trek The Next Generation, and it's a fan favorite. on a lot of people's favorite lists out there. It's the best of both worlds. It aired in season 3, and it's episode 26. And season 4, episode 1. So, this is another one of those 2-part episodes that I'm only going to make one episode in total. So, basically, this was a big, huge thing. The Borg are back. Their conquest is to take over Earth, and they kidnap Captain Picard. Not much more to say than that, but this leads into a really, the first time ever I think Star Trek has done this. It leads into a cliffhanger, 2-part cliffhanger, and that summer of 1990, going into 1991, was the longest summer of my life, personally, and probably for a lot of other people out there. What happens to Captain Picard? Will he destroy the Enterprise? Can they get him back? These were all questions that led all through the summer going into the fall of 90. And I just, really my favorite episode, the Borg made him Locutus of Borg, Captain Picard, and Commander Riker now becomes Captain Riker. It just was everything you wanted ever from a Star Trek episode and more. Like I said, I think the first time they've ever did a cliffhanger for a series in this dramatic fashion. It had all the elements of Star Trek in both episodes. It was just, wow. Like I said, this is my favorite episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation ever. Probably, and it will probably be my favorite episode of any incarnation of Star Trek. Tell me what you guys think below. How did this episode affect you and whatnot? But guys, thank you for joining me on my top 4 favorite Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes. Stay tuned. We'll do this again very soon as I give you my top 4 Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes. Until next time, live long and prosper. Thanks for watching. Take care.